Same here, likewise.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for taking our time.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Are
आप
we ready?
schedule भी नहीं busy. Oh yes, we are ready. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to another podcast of the Pakistan Pivot. This is your host Abdul Basit Khwaja. Today we are here to understand the relation between US and Pakistan, especially in the light of the withdrawal of United States forces from Afghanistan after the end of this war on terror. Pakistan's relation with US has always been seen through the security lens, and we want to see what the future holds for both the countries. And for that purpose, we have our guest today, Dr. Hussain Nadim, who is the executive director at IPRI. He has been involved with the public sector for a long period of time now, starting from his internships at Pakistan Embassy in Washington to the Ministry of Planning and Development, and now at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. We welcome you to the show, Dr. Saab. Thank you so much for taking out time for us.
Thank you very much for having me over. Pleasure to be here.
Same here, sir. Recently, your book, Aid Politics and War Narratives, to understand the Pakistan-US relations. आपने कैरी-लुगर बिल के ऊपर काफ़ी आपने उसके ऊपर डिटेल एक केस स्टडी की हुई है. हिस्टोरिकली हम जब देखते हैं वी फील दैट द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन बोथ द कंट्रीज हैज़ बीन अमेजिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ Lyndon Johnson, Nixon, I might be missing few names, Bush, and I think so Clinton as well was here. But it feels like the relationship is now more towards its complicated wali situation mein. What is the reality between these historic relations and the relationship we are having right now with United States of America, the times we are going through?
And that's a multi-million-dollar question, and there's a lot to unpack over there. बट कुछ चीज़ें इसमें ज़रा ज़्यादा ज़रूरी हैं बात करना, बिकॉज लॉट ऑफ पीपल टेंड टू थिंक कि पाकिस्तान अमेरिका के हालात जो हैं वो ख़राब हो गए हैं पिछले कुछ सालों में, ख़ास तौर पर पिछली इमरान खान की गवर्नमेंट में. कई लोगों का बिलीफ ये है कि शायद जो है वो ख़राब इसलिए हो गए हैं कि बिकॉज पाकिस्तान हैज़ नथिंग मोर टू से, टेररिज्म की वजह से एक्सेट्रा. बट एक्चुअली इफ़ यू लुक एट इट, देयर आर टू वेज टू लुक एट दिस इशू. एक तो ब्रॉडर लेवल के ऊपर यूएस फॉरेन पॉलिसी कॉन्टूर्स हैव चेंज्ड ड्रास्टिकली सिंस द एंड ऑफ द कोल्ड वॉर. फिर आपका 90s का पीरियड रहा जिसके अंदर द यूएस वाज फोकस्ड वेरी मच ऑन दिस इंटरनल इश्यूज. देन केम द वॉर ऑन टेरर, एंड देन वॉर ऑन टेरर बेसिकली अनलीश्ड अ न्यू एरा ऑफ यूएस फॉरेन पॉलिसी इन विच पाकिस्तान प्लेड अ वेरी सेंट्रल रोल इन द वॉर ऑन टेरर अगेंस्ट अल-कायदा एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. सो टू से दैट पाकिस्तान यूएस relationships have been rather stable back in the days and all, if you look at more closely, they were never really stable. It was more of a, and हम ये भी बात करते हैं कि जी हमारा ट्रांजैक्शनल रिलेशनशिप है, क्लाइंटल रिलेशनशिप है. Well, relationships at the geopolitics level are all transactional and cliental. There is nothing wrong with that. Bigger issue is that did we get a good bargain or not? My personal opinion is that we did not get a good bargain. We should have had a better bargain. We were part of the American security apparatus and American geostrategic priorities, not since the war on terror or during the first Afghan war. We were part of that since 1951 and 2. We were there during the Korean War. We were also there during the Vietnam War. We helped the American and the Western Bloc throughout the Cold War, which we essentially were very important in. And also, Pakistan was one of the most important countries that eventually was a pivotal reason why the Soviet Union collapsed and the Cold War ended. There are a lot of stories about how different officials in Pakistan played their very important part in the end of that Cold War. So that was there, from opening up to US relations with China, to the Afghanistan, etc., jihad over there, to where we are right now. So Pakistan has been an important player in the security apparatus. The real problem is that Pakistan was not able to transform that relation from a very specific security relation into a trade geoeconomics relationship, which is why we are here right now.
Looking specifically, going back to your book, and I had the privilege to go through it, and I was reading it, and it's definitely you've put in a lot of research on it. कैरी-लुगर बिल से रिलेटेड आपने बड़ा अच्छा तरीके से आपने उसको क्या कहते हैं लोगों के लिए एक डीमिस्टिफाई भी किया सारी चीज़ों के लिए कि what were the intentions and everything. कैरी-लुगर बिल didn't even last its whole tenure and everything. How do you think that had an influence on the US-Pakistan relation? ये जो specifically I'm talking about the KLP.
I think what is happening right now between the US and Pakistan has its seeds directly during the Kerry-Lugar-Berman Act. जब हम ये कैरी-लुगर-बर्मन की बात करते हैं तो उसमें एक नाम जो मिसिंग है वो है बाइडन. People don't know, but Kerry-Lugar-Berman Act, the KLB bill, was championed and designed by then Congressman Biden. He was in Pakistan. He met the political leadership over here. There are a lot of documents available on his visit and all. He was the one who went back to America, championed the bill, but then he became the vice president, so he could not be the signatory in the Congress. The problem is that this is my opinion based on the interviews I've done in the US and over here, that during the Kerry-Lugar-Berman time, the now President Biden, back in the days he was the vice president, he did not have a really good experience of dealing with Pakistan. There was a lot of animosity, there was a lot of back and forth tug of war that shaped his views on Pakistan. So when he came back into power, he came with a lot of baggage and an existing notions about Pakistan. Usually that's not the case with any American president, because most of the American presidents who are becoming presidents have very little understanding or exposure of Pakistan. It's like that, one of those periphery countries. But with Biden, he had visited, he knew the people, he understood a lot of people, he had connections in the political establishment, the military establishment. And the sad part is that I think he was not too happy about how he saw Pakistan in a very positive way. So what we see right now, specifically, but if you, again, a lot of people say कि Pakistan and America के हालात ख़राब हैं. If you look at the relations between President Trump and ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan, they were very, very good. They were having calls, they were cooperating on Afghanistan, they were engaging on different relations, issues related to even Trump on multiple occasions actually offered to help in Kashmir as well. The flip happened when Biden came, and Biden came with a baggage and a luggage, and that luggage was so powerful that I think Pakistan is not paying the price of the last 2 to 3 or 4 years of policies. Pakistan is paying the prices of what happened back in 2008, 9, 10, 11 and 12.
हम एक इंस्टीट्यूशनल मेमोरी की बात करते हैं, और मतलब यूएस बड़ा एक एग्जांपल है इस चीज़ के ऊपर कि दे हैव इंस्टीट्यूशनल मेमोरी, डेमोक्रेट्स आ जाए, रिपब्लिकन्स आ जाए, उनकी पॉलिसीज़ चलती रहती हैं. यहाँ पे लगता है कुछ तसलसल अब उनका भी जो है वो टूट गया थोड़ा सा इन टर्म्स ऑफ पाकिस्तान. ये कुछ जैसे आपने बाइडन के ऊपर आपने बताया कि क्या इज़ द रीज़न फॉर दैट, या अब यूएस के इंटरेस्ट चेंज हो गए हैं, बिकॉज अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमें तो साउथ एशिया में भी नहीं देखा जाता, हमें एफपैक बोला जाता है जो. सो व्हाट डू यू थिंक इज द रीज़न?
पहले तो मैं इसलिए एफपैक वाली जो टर्म है ना, उससे बड़ा मैंने पूरा एक सेक्शन लिखा हुआ है इसके ऊपर बुक के अंदर, वेयर आई एम वेरी मच अगेंस्ट दिस टर्म्स एफपैक्स एक्सेट्रा बिकॉज दीज आर नियो colonial political configurations and framing of the other.
Exactly.
The moment you call Pakistan a part of South Asia, it has a different connotation, because South Asia is one of the fastest growing economic region. You have countries that are growing at the 6 to 7% GDP per growth per rate. South Asia is a different ethos, the culture and all of that. But for your short-term political interest, you somehow decide that Pakistan is now not part of South Asia. We're going to configure it together with Afghanistan. Now, problem is that Afghanistan is a failed state. Has been a failed state. The moment you club Pakistan with Afghanistan, next thing you have under the AFPAC discourse, everything in Pakistan is basically a reflection of what is happening in Afghanistan, which is why you have Moody's dropping Pakistan's rating, Standard & Poor's dropping Pakistan's rating, the investment doesn't come in, the travel advisory, the US State Department goes up. So all these things, just by talking, just by framing how you configure a country at the international level, you're actually deciding the fate of that country. And that is one of the fundamental problems that Pakistan has faced since 2008 and 9, when Pakistan was configured by the Democrats under this whole AFPAC notions. You see a stark increase in terrorism, and you see a drop in economic prosperity.
Yes.
So it's how you frame countries that actually define their reality then.
बिल्कुल. But looking at this troubled relationship, US still is the largest export market for Pakistan, so there are some good sides to it as well. Now, looking at Pakistan has made immense sacrifices. हम जितनी दफ़ा हम बोलें, I wish the world also acknowledges our sacrifices. We have paid the price the most of all the countries in terms of course, Afghanistan has also taken the shot and everything. But कोई हमारी collaboration with अमेरिका के साथ इस चीज़ के ऊपर हो सकती है कि ट्रेड है, टेक्नोलॉजी है, टूरिज्म है. इंडिया के साथ उनका सॉफ्टवेयर का एक आईटी मार्केट के अंदर उनका एक ज़बरदस्त उनकी कोलैबोरेशन है, एंड इट्स बेयरिंग रिजल्ट्स फॉर द इंडियन इकोनॉमी एज वेल. हमारे साथ क्या इट्स गोइंग टू ये सिक्योरिटी लेंस से ही देखा जाएगा, और do you think there's going to be a change now?
To simply answer this question, I usually say this thing about other elements as well, that we are trying to run our foreign relations and the government as well in the 21st century, using the tools and the tactics of the 17th and 18th century and the mindset of the 12th century. Foreign policy has changed. So has the trade policy, so has the economic policy, so has the economic tools, so has the technology. If you're going to try to develop relations or, like we say, rebuild relations with the US on G2G level, it's not happening. I'll give you one example of this thing. If you look at the relations between US and India, till the 90s, they were not very much there. Up until 1995, 96, India and the US relations were very much shaky. What happened then? What happened was essentially one thing, that it was Bangalore and Silicon Valley that partnered with each other. And that private sector B2B relations eventually, after a decade later, realized that there was so much potential that it transformed into a G2G relation. In Pakistan, what the problem is that you have bureaucrats, diplomats, military officials driving a US-Pakistan relations. The net result of that is they're not subject matter experts of economy, trade, technology, or even education or scientific research. The net result is that what you end up engaging with the US on is actually a security assistance. You have really nothing to give to the United States beyond security, not because you have nothing to give, but because the people that are representing you with the US are those that only understand security and foreign policy. The moment you change the dynamics of the room and the people in the room, you bring in, for instance, the tech entrepreneurs, you bring in female journalists, you bring in more development practitioners. And from the other side as well, you'll see that conversation will start shifting. But for that to happen, Pakistan must realize one thing, that you cannot go around the world with nothing to sell. You need to start investing first in your own technology base, start developing capacity. Once you have that, you don't really have to sell then. People will come and buy it off from you. So I think that is, by the way, there is some silver lining in that, because that is something that has already started to happen with a lot of VC funds coming to Pakistan, a lot of money being poured into Pakistan, because there are certain islands of successes developing over here. And I would rather want the government to, again, let me recap it. If you want to build relations with the US based on technology trade, focus on building technology and trade domestically, the US will come on its own.
Definitely. I think so. हम काफ़ी दफ़ा ये कहते हैं कि US is looking through the lens, अफगानिस्तान की लेंस से देख रहे हैं. हम भी शायद इस चीज़ के ऊपर हमारे लिए भी एक पैराडाइम शिफ्ट होना ज़रूरी है कि हम भी US के रिलेशन से जो हमारा ताल्लुक़ है उसके साथ, वो सिर्फ अफगानिस्तान के साथ जोड़ के हम ना देखें. I would have to ask you this question. In light of the recent events, our former Prime Minister Imran Khan Saab had mentioned about this regime change and everything. Do you think that has also had a sort of an effect on the relationship between Pakistan and US? कोई हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि बहुत ज़्यादा concrete evidence आया, but then they are के एक that narrative is there in Pakistan right now.
Okay, so here is the thing on this part. Sitting here in Islamabad, we tend to think that somehow the US is always thinking about us. It's not.
Yeah.
We are a very important country. I have zero qualms saying in that. No matter how much the United States continue to say, or their officials continue to say that Pakistan is not important, we as a 220 million young population with a robust potential economy and very strong military forces, a very strong local politics and all, we're a very important country. If I would say top 10 countries for sure for the United States. But it's not that the US is constantly thinking about us. Second, what happened, the discourse by the Prime Minister Imran Khan, the ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan, is a byproduct of an already sour relationship. So the relationship did not get estranged because of what the regime change, whole mantra and all. The relationship was already estranged. There was no conversation. And that lack of communication between the Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Biden and the two governments is exactly the reason why these rumors and these conspiracies generated. The reason why conspiracies generate is when there is a vacuum of information.
Yes.
The worst thing that happened between the US and Pakistan relations is not actually the fault of Pakistan, by the way.
Yeah.
It was, and I don't want to throw blame game, but a United States government under President Biden took over the office in February. It was the worst time in Afghanistan, Feb, March, April, May, June, the worst time in Afghanistan, and there was not a single level of coordination between the top leadership of the two countries.
Exactly.
Pakistan tried, and it was politicized that somehow Imran Khan is not getting a call and all of that. Imran Khan was not getting a call for himself. It was for the sake of Afghanistan that the call was very important. Americans did not engage. For whatever reason they did not engage, we don't know yet. I talked to my friends in the US government and the US officials, even they don't know why it happened. But the funny part is that the President Biden did not call anyone. He was not engaging with anyone in the region. The net result was what we saw on August 15th.
Yes.
The way US was humiliated and the way there was an absolute tragedy of situation in Afghanistan, it made us realize that it was a direct result of this lack of coordination and communication. Now come to fast forward to September, October, November, December, January and April. When these things are happening at the same time, when the US is not having a conversation, the Afghanistan has flipped over and there is domestic political trouble going on, and then you have Ukraine war where Prime Minister Imran Khan and the security establishment decides that they're going to be more balanced and they're going to open up to Russia, things go bad. Naturally, the US was not happy. Naturally, the Western countries were lobbying. I mean, it is unprecedented that about 13, 14 EU ambassadors in Pakistan would write a letter urging Pakistani leadership to not go to Russia. So these are unprecedented acts. So if you look at all these tiny little events happening, they build up to that conspiracy theory. But whether it is a conspiracy theory or not, whether it is validated or not, there is ample evidence to state it that this could have happened. There is ample evidence to deny it as well. But what the real problem is, where I want to get it, is the reason why the US and Pakistan relationship stand where they are right now is because of the lack of coordination, communication between the two countries, which generated this whole plausible idea that maybe there was a conspiracy theory, maybe the Americans didn't want the Prime Minister Imran Khan to be in power, and etc., etc. So I do think that when there is vacuum in conversation and in information, you have all sorts of theories that generate. Could be right, could be wrong. That is yet to be seen. Maybe 10 years down the line, we will read it in someone's book about what happened. But at the moment, the jury is still out.
यूएस के अभी भी स्ट्रेटेजिक जो इंटरेस्ट है वो रीजन के अंदर मौजूद हैं. ख़ास तौर से ये आई वाज रीडिंग अबाउट दिस इंडो-पैसिफिक इकोनॉमिक फ्रेमवर्क फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी एंड वी हैव कंट्रीज लाइक इंडिया इन इट एंड यूएस ने maybe to counter China's interest in the region and everything. What are the implications for Pakistan? Pakistan is not a part of this. What do you think are the implications for Pakistan out of this new alliance?
The way to actually answer this is rather simple. Your domestic policy and your foreign policy are tied together. You cannot have a robust foreign policy without the domestic angle to it. So what we're facing right now is a twin-edged sword. One, there is a global change in the world where there is a restructuring, flux in alliances, some very, very meta shifts are happening. What are the meta shifts that are happening? I'll tell you. Pakistan has become India, and India has become the new Pakistan in terms of the US power configuration. Why I say that? Throughout the Cold War, India was more aligned towards the Soviet Union. Pakistan was allied towards the US. In the new Cold War with China, Pakistan has become more allied towards the Eastern Bloc, while the India is joined a very strong, almost has joined the American camp. This reposturing has created new ripples in the region, new alliances and new stories that will emerge out of this thing. So that is one meta shift that is happening globally, where Pakistan is not too sure because our security establishment, our security bloc is entirely almost reliant on the American side. For economic purposes, our trading, export, we also rely on the US. Yet geopolitically now, we're forced. Pakistan does not want to play the camp politics. It has always maintained that. And we have been very successful in balancing between the US and China since the 1970s. But now we're being forced to take a side, which is not a place where we want to be. So that is one problem. The second problem is that if we're being forced, how much power and leverage do we have to actually push back that thing? Very little. With us going to the IMF, with Pakistan's economy almost on the verge of collapse, reserves that are dwindling, the domestic political stability completely in a disarray, we are not left with too many options. Back in the days, whenever things went back for Pakistan, we had options. पहली बार पाकिस्तान में ये हुआ है कि I think the options have run out. Because for a very long time, our ruling elite, and don't mind me saying this thing, our ruling elite does not have a pie now. That pie that was there, the pie has either shrunk or the pie is non-existent. Hence the panic in the country on what the future will look like in a changing global environment. So we don't have any, I mean, I'm sorry to sound very pessimistic, but the truth really is we've run out of options.
The global implications of this is something, is Pakistan wants friendly relations with all of the countries. But हम कोल्ड वॉर की भी बात करते हैं, हम आजकल वो आपने अभी जैसे आपने जिक्र किया कि ईस्टर्न ब्लॉक और सबके साथ है, बट आई थिंक इट्स अबाउट मे बी द टाइम हैज़ कम द वर्ल्ड हैज़ टू डू मोर देन व्हाट इज़ बीन आस्क्ड फ्रॉम पाकिस्तान टू डू मोर. दैट कॉन्स्टेंट क्या कहते हैं जो पाकिस्तान को विजुलाइज़ किया जाता है जिस तरीके से, आई थिंक सो दैट हैज़ टू चेंज. कहीं हम भी कुछ अपनी प्रोजेक्शन करने में कहीं ना कहीं कुछ पीछे रह गए.
कहीं नहीं हर जगह ही.
मैं थोड़ा सा वो हो रहा था कि आई वाज जस्ट कीपिंग अ लिटिल बिट पॉलिटिकली करेक्ट और समथिंग, बट
देखिए हियर इज द थिंग,
हमसे भी गलती हो गई अपने आप की.
आई थिंक फंडामेंटली 80% is our fault in how we've projected ourselves, and 20% I would blame it on the rest of the world. Look, rest of the world is not an expert on you. They're gonna write about you, they're gonna talk about you based on your own reality that you're pushing out. If your ruling elite goes around the world lobbying to the Western audiences that, look, my entire country is on the verge of extremism. There are Maulvis over there who are rabid extremists, this and this. There is poverty, they will explode, and there is terrorism. I'm your best bet. So support me. That has been happening in Pakistan for the last decades, if not more. 3-4 decades से पाकिस्तान में क्या हो रहा है, हर आपका पॉलिटिकल लीडर जाके लंदन या अमेरिका में जाके अपने आप को लॉबी करता है कि जी मुल्क में जो सारे जो बैठे हुए हैं वो जाहिल अवाम बैठी है, वो एक्सट्रीमिस्ट हैं. आई एम दी ओनली वन हु इज़ लिबरल. दे प्रेजेंट देमसेल्व्स एज लिबरल elite that can talk in English, that can wear sophisticated suits and all of that, and that are intellectually more up there. That is the worst thing that you have sold. Whenever these people then visit, the Westerners visit Pakistan, the first thing then they ask is that we thought Pakistan was an extremist. The reason why they thought was because that is the only thing that has been projected to them. We have done not just a poor job, we have been cruel to ourselves in the way we have projected our people, our culture, our morals, our ethics and all of that. The news in coming out of Pakistan, if OBL is coming out of here, if half of Al-Qaeda leadership is being targeted in Faisalabad and all, the drone strikes are happening over here, we're providing nothing more than the security. What else do you expect New York Times and the foreign policy to write about us? Then we complain about the fact that, oh, why are they writing this about us? When all we have to really sell is that. And then there are further problems that I was talking in the other podcast about this as well. Then all positive narrative making machines that you have, what are the positive narrative making machines? Your education system, your culture, your youth, your entertainment sector. One by one, since General Zia-ul-Haq's time, you've crushed that. You've dismantled opportunities for entertainment. You've not allowed the music sector to build. वो मसा करके कोक स्टूडियो कहीं से आ गया जो कि आपकी पहचान बन गई. Pasuri right now is one of the biggest things that has happened in Pakistan.
Exactly.
This was not supposed to happen. There is no celebration in that कि आपका 50 साल में एक पसूरी ने आपके जाके इस तरह के. It was supposed to be a regular feature. Like they have in South Korea, they've created K-pop and that Gangnam Style guy. They're producing every other day these things, the soap operas and all. We've choked all of that. When you choke all of that, then the foreign audience doesn't really have anything else to talk about except for security. And that is where we are stuck in our own prison.
I think so, if I'm not wrong, G5 Internet Observatory was your brainchild, and it's a gold mine for researchers like us. आप लोगों ने हमारी ज़िंदगी बड़ी आसान कर दी उसमें.
I'm glad.
That data is, it's मतलब, looking at it, it's state of the art. And to be honest, there are very few examples of this that is happening throughout the world, and IPRI is mashallah doing that. I'm not sure if it's linked with IPRI or no. It's
a separate venture, but we had a partnership with IPRI.
It's a separate venture. Reports हैं, data मौजूद है, insights हैं. पॉलिसी मेकिंग के अंदर कितना ज़्यादा वो डेटा और ये सारी चीज़ें यूज़ हो रही हैं, बिहेवियर चेंज हो रहा है? क्योंकि रोज़ मैं शायद इस पर पेसिमिस्टिक भी हो सकता हूँ, क्योंकि रोज़ एक नया ट्रेंड ट्विटर पे या कहीं पे कुछ ना कुछ चल रहा होता है, कभी किसी सहाफ़ी के ख़िलाफ़, कभी किसी सियासतदान के ख़िलाफ़, और एवरीवन इज़ गिल्टी फॉर दैट. आप लोगों ने स्पॉट आउट करके दे रहे हैं प्रॉब्लम्स भी और इश्यूज भी और एवरीथिंग, बट डू यू थिंक दैट डेटा एंड एवरीथिंग, दैट रिसर्च इज हैविंग एन इम्पैक्ट ऑन पॉलिसी मेकिंग?
So, देखिए, जो digital space है ना, we are living in two worlds right now. One is the physical world where we are, and the second is the digital world. In physical world, on average, you end up meeting about, let's say, 25 to 30,000 people in all your life, 60, 70 years of life. You speak about 100,000 words every month or something. The digital world has very different dynamics. On a digital world, you get to interact with over millions and millions of people on a daily basis, the content, the data, and all of that. And you are also producing terabytes of data on minutes basis. So the digital world has a very different dynamics altogether. Back in the days, people would say कि यार वो social media पे जो होता है वो social media पे होता है, oh, it does not impact me. That has changed. Because what happens with social media, and the reason why I actually set up the G5IO was because a couple of years back I started noticing that how online hate against minority groups, against individuals, was no more relevant online only. It was having a direct impact on how the minorities were being attacked in the country. So हर रोज़ एक आप minority के खिलाफ एक ट्रेंड चला रहे हैं, उस ट्रेंड का नतीजा ये हो रहा है कि डिसइंफॉर्मेशन, फेक न्यूज़ जो है वो ट्रांसलेट हो रही है, आपको उन इलाकों में जा रही है जहाँ पे एजुकेशन लेवल, लिटरेसी लेवल नहीं है, वे दे कैन डिटेक्ट कि यार ये फेक है या नहीं है, वो उठ के अपने साथ वाले किसी माइनॉरिटी का घर वो जाके जला देते हैं. These are real issues that were happening. In rest of the world, fake news might have an impact on politics and all. In our part of the world, fake news can get you killed. Disinformation can get you killed. It can get the entire communities labeled as etc. etc. So out of that need, I realized that on the digital space, there was a need to be able to crunch big data, to provide research, and to sift through what is and what isn't real over there. And hence the G5O came, and we work very deeply with AI-powered technologies in figuring out who's running the networks, what is the behavior, how certain terrorist groups, extremist groups are evolving over the time, what are their tactics, by doing comparative studies as well. So it's a very in-depth work. Funny part is that for the first time I realized that this level of data and this level of work had a huge appetite within the security apparatus, because social media was pricking them a lot. And they were not sure exactly on how to even understand it, because you had to train new generation of researchers who could actually use R and Python programming to scrape data, to analyze data, and to then figure out how those data affects the behavior. So I spent about good 6 months to a year training the new generation of researchers who understood the digital technologies, who understood how that is changing the behavior. And we were asking unprecedented questions. One of the questions that I recently asked, and I still haven't gotten the answer from my team, is what goes viral? I mean, it's a very simple question. What goes viral? And psychologically, we try to figure out what kind of words, what kind of pictures. And there are methods you can type scientific methods based, you can easily tell that if you have a particular display picture and a particular word timed well, it will go viral on the internet.
There's a playbook on this.
There's a playbook.
There
is a science. I mean, if you have enough data and enough time, you can predict every single thing in the world.
How can we use this data to make social media kinder? I know there's a diversity of thoughts. अच्छी बात है, लोग अपने आप को अपना opinion express करते हैं. There should be freedom of expression. But do you think the time has come that we start helping people with, in order to make the social media kinder? Because in the last few years, this space has been a little toxic. Has been very toxic.
I don't think it is a question of data. I don't think you can use data to make someone kinder. Kindness starts from really your family values and all of that, which goes back to your own society and everything and what you watch and what you see. You see, do I really blame people? And I think this might be a little bit controversial, but do I really blame people of what they're doing on internet? I mean, I get trolled a lot. I've been trolled by the left, by the right, the lumps professors, by I mean, you name it. I've been trolled. The TLPs have been on my back for a very long time. So left, right, center, and it's not just me. I'm not going to play a victim. बहुत प्यार मिलता है मुझे. And this is not just me. Anyone with an opinion is going to get trolled, whether you have 10 followers or 100,000 followers. There is something else going on over here. And I think that is the reason where we need to look at, because it's easy to reject criticism against you, saying, "Bhai, oh, ye to mujhe troll kar raha hai." Instead of like looking into yourself and asking yourself, am I actually being disingenuous, or am I being a proper intellectual or whatever? So these are certain questions that are there, but there is something even more deeper in that. Like, the situation where we live in Pakistan, 12 घंटे आपकी बिजली जा रही है, the bills are skyrocketing, the petrol is skyrocketing. Yesterday, Islamabad police posted a picture how they cracked down on shisha cafes and they had arrested some young kids out of that. I mean, the priorities are unbelievable. बसंत आपने इस मुल्क में बैन की हुई है, एंटरटेनमेंट के एवेन्यूज़ आपने बैन किए हुए हैं, यूथ के लिए आपने कुछ छोड़ा नहीं इस मुल्क में, ना प्ले ग्राउंड्स हैं, ना कुछ और है, ना एवेन्यूज़ हैं, ना कोई अपवर्ड सोशल मोबिलिटी है, ना एजुकेशनल सिस्टम आपके सही रहे हैं. इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट यूर एक्सपेक्टिंग वो गालियाँ भी ना निकाल लें आपको. सो the abuse that you see on social media is a direct result that you have closed all avenues for entertainment, distraction, pleasure, productive values for the young audience. When that builds up, it has to find a new channel to. The new channel is they go on social media, whoever is in the government. यही लोग पहले इमरान खान को भी गालियाँ निकाल रहे थे, यही लोग अब इस गवर्नमेंट को भी निकाल रहे हैं, और ये लोग कल को जो भी गवर्नमेंट आएगी उसको गालियाँ निकालेंगे. द इशू इज़ नॉट दैट. आज मैं उस दिन भी मैं पॉडकास्ट में बात किया, आज आप बसंत खोल दें और फिर मुझे बताएं आप कि 2 महीने जो बसंत के जनवरी, फरवरी और 3 महीने मार्च का होता है टाइम, उस टाइम के ऊपर अगर पाकिस्तान में बसंत के अलावा कोई और बात होती है ना, तो आप मुझे बताएं. You've blocked the youth from all avenues.
जब PSL स्टार्ट होता है तो PSL के ऊपर सारी सियासत बंद हो जाती है. Everything is we start living in a different, more क्या कहते हैं ना, kinder world.
Absolutely. So you've created hell for young kids over here. Yes. Hell they're gonna give you then.
Yes. Yes, they're giving big time. और बात ये कि ये frustrations और ये जो सारी चीज़ें, it's also resulting of what जो आपने mention किया, economy के challenges और सारी चीज़ें. और इसलिए I will just come with this one question on the local politics and everything. You understand क्या कहते हैं यहाँ पे जो सारा हमारा political environment है और सारी चीज़ें हैं. I want to ask you this question. हमारी जो political parties के structures हैं और सारी चीज़ें जो हैं, जिस तरीके से they are run and govern और सब कुछ, आम आदमी की बात नहीं पहुंच पाती, ना आम आदमी के मसले मसाइल हल हो पाते. ये नहीं है कि हुकूमत काम नहीं करती, हुकूमत काम भी करती है. अगर फ्लड्स हो रहे हैं तो उसके अंदर रिस्पॉन्ड कर रही है, एहसास है, बेशक आप उसको एहसास कहें, बेनज़ीर इनकम सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम कहें, लोग काम हुआ है लोगों के लिए. बट देन एट द सेम टाइम जो पार्टिसिपेशन है पॉलिटिक्स के अंदर, हम आम आदमी की नहीं देखते, यंग की नहीं देखते. ठीक है, वही शायद डायनेस्टीज़ हैं, वही फैमिलीज़ हैं, ये सारी चीज़ें. ये कोई हमारी जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ के स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं, ये चीज़ें, उनमें कहीं आपको कोई इम्प्रूवमेंट नज़र आ रही है? दिस इज़ वेयर आई वांट टू आस्क यू योर ओपिनियन.
मैंने अपने जेन्युइन ओपिनियंस के ऊपर दे दिए तो आपको एडिट करने पड़ जाएंगे. चलें, कर लीजिएगा एडिट. देखिए, टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन यू हैव टू फर्स्ट रिकग्नाइज आवर पोजिशन इन हिस्ट्री. वी आर अ पोस्ट कॉलोनियल स्टेट where the decolonization supposedly happened. The British left, but they left their power structures. Yeah. They left an entire trained generation of their individuals in the bureaucracy, the feudal elite, the military elite, and all of that. After Pakistan, 3 different power centers emerged. One was the feudal aristocracy, the second was the civil bureaucracy, the third was the military institution. It was a Praetorian oligarchy. Military naturally, because Pakistan was initially had to fight wars and everything, so military naturally became more powerful than the other 2 blocks, which by the way still retain very much power. The circus has essentially been between these 3 different power blocks. 75 years on, the circus you see right now is again between. The faces have changed a little bit, but if you look a little bit closely, faces भी ज़्यादा चेंज नहीं हुए हुए. It's the same system, same practices, same tactics, same methods. जो गवर्नमेंट आती है वही उन्होंने सेट ऑफ रूल बुक रखी हुई है, हाउ द ब्यूरोक्रेसी विल प्ले, हाउ टू यूज़ द पुलिस, हाउ टू यूज़ द इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज एक्सेट्रा टू एसेंशली टारगेट दी अदर. जो गवर्नमेंट में आते जाते हैं वही रूल्स अप्लाई करता रहता है. और ये रूल्स कब के हैं आपके? सेक्शन 144 was deployed back during Bhagat Singh's time. माशाल्लाह आज भी वही सेक्शन 144 लगा रहे हैं. पुलिस रूल्स हैव नॉट बीन अपडेटेड सिंस गॉड नोज 100 years और सो. कॉलोनियल एरा की प्रैक्टिसेस से आप मुल्क को चला रहे हैं. द प्रॉब्लम इज़ you got the freedom, you got the independence, you got the country, but again you've not really gotten the freedom that you. I'm not this is not any endorsement for Hakiki Azadi or any political party, but the truth really is you go to the police station, can you get justice? No. You go to the legal courts, can you get justice? No. Do you go to any public service provider and get an easy access? Impossible. Why is it that this is the case? It is not that somehow our institutions failed and we are incompetent. We are very competent people when it comes to our own personal businesses. Yes. How is that same political parties, they continue to grow in their businesses while they're in power, and yet the state exchequer goes down? It is not possible. It is because there is a level of corruption. There is more than corruption. There is an issue of nepotism where right people are not being placed to the right job. I'll give you one example. This former GM of digital media wing, Imran Ghazali, he left the digital media wing as general manager. The new ad that came out for a recruitment requires, for a digital media position, they require you to have a PhD with a 25 years of work experience. How do you get a 25 years of experience in digital technologies when digital technologies 25 साल पहले थी नहीं, and you want a PhD on top? It's ridiculous. The reason why these are the cases is because you want to continue to put in retired officials on coveted positions, because somehow this country does not have enough youth to fill in the positions. Our fundamental challenge is that we're trying to run a country in the 21st century with the methods and the tactics of the 17th, 18th century and with the mindset of the 12th century. It hasn't worked. It will never work.
We'll end on this note. Digital library idea of every... क्या कहते हैं, we talking about the G5 Internet Observatory. What can we expect next from your hat of ideas?
So, from your platform, I think many people already know, day after tomorrow is my last day at IPRI. So, I will be exiting the public sector and the think tank sector. And I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing next, but I do know and I do understand that having worked in part with data and technology, I've realized that the change that I've always thought would come by working in the system and by reforms, I do think that the change is going to come via technology. Technology is the only messiah anymore. That will be the one that will disrupt Pakistan, and technology is the only way Pakistan is going to go upwards and forward, which is one of the reasons why the last project I've done at IPRI is actually launched a Web3 initiative. And we've done a couple of roundtables on that. We'll be launching our flagship report as to lobby the government to focus more on the regulatory frameworks, making it easy for the Web3 content creators to develop their products. So I'm definitely going to be venturing into the technology side and the innovation side. The goal is to figure out a way to actually use technology, not for the purpose of only creating economy, $1 billion, जो आजकल ये सारा चल रहा है, VCs and all. I'm not sure if it's got a bigger vision or a better vision, but I have a slightly different vision for technology. Pakistan doesn't really have to be an economic superpower. Pakistan doesn't really have to be a military superpower or any of that. What Pakistan needs to be is a power that is morally and ethically at the top. I mean, people look at you and they come over here without a problem walking on the streets, knowing that this country is so ethically and morally safe that you can just keep your eyes closed, walk around, you can lose your wallet on the road and people will return. That was a time when this was all happening. Yes. So I think I am more interested in how technology can shift human behavior into making them more responsible citizens, into making them more conscious, self-aware beings that can help the community around, that can help the people around. You don't really have to be an economic giant or a military giant. You don't need tanks, guns or anything. You need to be one human individual, one good human can change the world. I mean, it took really one Nelson Mandela, one Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, one Jesus Christ and all of that. You need to create Pakistan should become a factory of individuals and talent and humans that are not just technically advanced and technically competent, but a generation that is actually morally also very powerful. And by the way, I'm not saying that I'm somehow morally like up there and all of that. There's a lot of homework that I have to do myself. It's a constant process of change. But we need to aspire to become a moral superpower, an ethical superpower, a spiritual superpower that can fuse together the goodness of this world and become an actually good country.
Yes, definitely. So ये podcast आपके साथ ख़त्म करने का बिल्कुल भी दिल नहीं चाह रहा. But of course you, as you mentioned, the last few days left at Ipri, and you have a very busy schedule also, but you took out time again for us. And this is actually, this is your second podcast with the Pakistan Pivot. So I express my immense gratitude to you for taking out time and for sharing these wonderful insights that will help the audience to understand the evolving relationship between US and Pakistan, and of course the messages of motivation and inspiration you have left for the youth and for the people of Pakistan. Thank you so much, sir.
My
for
pleasure
your
to be
time.
here, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. So today's show was about the US-Pakistan evolving nature, and we are very thankful to Dr. Hussain Nadim Saab for taking us time for this particular podcast, and we'll be coming again soon with another topic, with another guest very soon. So if you like our content, please don't forget to like it, and do leave your feedback in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Until next time, Allah Hafiz.